just going to talk about the business, just how we do things, and some of the things that we've done which have changed it from being about 140 shop little shoe repair chain 30 years ago to what is now, actually we've got to 1,400 shops. But there's nothing complicated about it. And I'll start with some real basics, which is the economics of shoe repairs, some trivia you can take down to the pub. It's very simple. If you want to be in the shoe repair business and be successful, you've got to be good at repairing shoes and to be able to do so at no more than a third the cost of new shoes. Makes sense. And this was actually why the business was really, really good when I started in 1960. Because in those days, everyone wore leather shoes, leather uppers, leather soles, made in the UK, and they were quite expensive. Everyday shoes for everyday people with a sort of quality that you'd now buy from a Russell and Bromley. It was that sort of thing. So it's great for shoe repairers. Another thing that you should know about the demand for shoe repairs is that it depends on fashion. And in the 60s, when I started, 1960 when I started, it was the time when we had very, very pointed winkle pickers. Never been more pointed before or since. And when you get very pointed toes, you get very slim heels. And slim heels we love because the slimmer they are, the quicker they wear out. So it was all really very good. Until later in the 60s, those leather shoes started to be replaced by synthetics. There were synthetic soles which were guaranteed for 6 months, and then lots of shoes came from as cheaper imports, and the price of new shoes came down. Didn't help. And of course fashion moves in a cycle. It continues always in the same direction, never goes back again, and it takes 20 years to get from pointed toes back to pointed toes again. And of course the slim heels started to be replaced by thicker heels, and as a result the shoe repair turnover started to go down. In fact, in the late 60s, it went down by 15% for 3 years running. 15%, another 15%, 15%, which wiped out half the market in 3 years. Which meant that shoe repairers had to do something, and they looked round for other things to do. We sold all sorts of other things. We sold shopping baskets, leather goods, even hosiery. And the one thing that actually worked, that the cobblers were just about happy to do, was key cutting. And we introduced keys just at the time when the people who were cutting your keys, the ironmongers, were leaving the high street. So that's the reason why, that's the answer to the trivia question, why do cobblers cut keys? We were lucky. We took such an interest in keys, we decided to be very good at it, and we took half our shop and gave it over to key cutting. And we sort of learnt from that one of the secrets that has kept us going, which is if you want to survive as a shoe repairer on the high street, you've got to do something else. So we started doing engraving. It wasn't very sophisticated. Most of it was pet tags, and others were, in those days, nurses' badges. You can't do it now. But in those days, all the nurses had to buy their own badges. There were either blue badges with white writing or white badges with blue writing. That's the way it was. But it helped to make a business, and then a bit later we introduced watch repairs. And we became a service business rather than a shoe repair business. And it meant that we could then have a good enough business to survive when our competitors didn't. So gradually we started to take over some of the other shoe repair chains, until there was one left. The one left was called Mr. Minute, and that was not just in the UK, it was a global business, still is actually, in about 18 countries around the world with about 3,500, 4,000 shops, of which 500 were in the UK. And I'd for some time had been pursuing the guy who owned it, who is an American who lived in Switzerland, saying, can you sell me the shops in the UK? But he always said no. And then one day I discovered that he'd sold the whole of his business worldwide to UBS, the Swiss bank. So I thought this was my big chance. So I went down to London, saw the merchant banker, but I didn't get very far, because almost as soon as I mentioned the fact I wanted to buy his shops, he turned to me and said, look, I'm an expert at buying family businesses and putting in professional management. And you're one of the next ones on my list. So that actually made me suddenly realise that instead of having a wonderful opportunity to grow the business, I'd now got someone who was a threat to the future of the business. Someone who got so much money, owned by a Swiss bank, could open next to all our best shops, could pinch our best people and cut our prices and basically run us out of business. And that was my livelihood. That's what me and my wife and the children, that was it. So what were we going to do? Really, there's not much you can do in that situation other than being really good at what you do. And being so good, you really impress the customers. And it was that day that I suddenly realised, having been running the business for about 20 years, I then realised the secret behind great customer service. A bit embarrassing to admit it took so long, because it's so obvious and it's so simple. You can't create great service by a set of rules, or sending out a load of leaflets, or even having lots of training courses. The way to give customers great service is simply to trust the people who serve the customers with the freedom to do it the way they know best. And I should have known that, because about 3 years before this, I'd read a book called The Nordstrom Way. Nordstrom is a department store chain in the States, which has a reputation for fantastic service. Their sales clerks literally go the extra mile to look after their customers. And in the middle of this book was a management chart which was upside down, because the way they did it was to give the freedom to the people who served the customers, and everyone else was there to help. So that's what I did. I introduced my management chart, which was upside down, with the people who served the customers running the business, and everyone else in the organisation was there to help. That was it. That was going to be my answer to beat this new, very rich competitor. So I went out and I said, we're going to get rid of the rules. I'll just have 2 rules. Rule 1, look the part, wear the uniform, turn up on time, make sure the shop's absolutely spick and span. And the only other rule that I'm going to have is you've got to put the money in the till. Otherwise, you can do what you want. And I went on a mission. We took our newsletter. I said the rules have all gone, and I put up a notice in every shop saying that our colleagues have my total authority to do whatever they want to give an amazing service. Went round talking to people about it, talked to the management team, and as a result of doing all that, absolutely nothing happened at all. Because no one trusted me. No one believed that anyone would run a business by giving people the freedom to do what they wanted, to do their job the way they saw best. So I wasn't going to give up, because I was pretty sure this is the right thing to do. So I introduced a few guidelines. I didn't call them rules, I called them guidelines. And one was, I thought anyone, even if it's your first day with this business, you can spend up to £500 to settle a complaint. None of this, I've got to call head office, I've got to wait for the manager, I can't go into the till, we've got to go through a procedure, can you sign a form? They could do what they want. It took some time to get them to accept it, but that saved me an awful lot of money. And secondly, I said, charge what you want. Use our price list as a guide. Because in our business, when you're dealing with people bringing in engraving jobs and strange sort of problems with shoes and with watches and so, you never know quite what's going to come in. You can't write a price list for every job that arrives. So the way to cope with that is to say, you decide. And that's what they do. And what I wanted was to have our people just to use their initiative. Because who better to come up with the ideas to develop the business than the people who are actually doing the job and talk to the customers. I just said, look, if you have a great idea that works, just please tell us about it so we can get all the other shops to do it. And if it doesn't work, you can keep quiet, but stop doing it. And basically, for the last 20 years, this is the way we've been running our business. It took 5 years to make it work. And the biggest problem was to get particularly the middle management to buy into the idea. Because it's not easy for people to take on board the fact that they've spent their lives being told what to do, then they get promoted, and then you turn around and say, actually, you're not going to do it like your predecessors. I want you to give your people freedom, and your job is to look after them, not tell them what to do. And they came up with all the excuses of how can you make me responsible for my area of the business when I can't tell our people what to do. And then when I got them to delegate, they got worried as to, well, if I delegate everything, what is there left for me to do? But gradually, we've got through to everybody that right down the whole management structure, which we actually don't have in writing, incidentally. Everyone in our business, if it's an area manager, they run their area the way they want to. We don't tell them how to do it, they do it, as long as they give the people in their area the freedom to do their job the way they want. So it happens all the way down. So that's what we've been doing, and we've learnt loads of lessons as to how to make it work. And the biggest lesson is it only works with the right people. I want loads of people like Bob. Bob North over there is absolutely a superstar. He runs our shop in Taunton. He's been doing so for about 15 years. And there's very few people in Taunton who don't know Bob. His shop is an absolute joy. You go in there for fun. It takes about £10,000 a week in the middle of Taunton, when normally I'd expect 3,500, 4,000. He was a celebrity the other week because his team stopped some people who were raiding the jeweller next door. He was on the television, all the rest of it. I mean, he's a total local celebrity. And I want loads of people like Bob. But the problem was when we started on this journey, we were not looking for Bob, we were looking for shoe repairers and key cutters. And I didn't want shoe repairers and key cutters. I wanted people with personality. Because if you come with personality, I can teach you how to repair shoes and cut keys. But I can't put personality into a grumpy cobbler, however skilled they are. So this was a problem that we had to overcome, because recruitment was done by lots of people and still is right through the country, our area team. And the answer we came up with is what I call our Mr. Men interview assessment form, which this is not for the candidates to fill in. This is for the interviewer to fill in. There you've got it. Mr. Helpful, Mr. Keen, Mr. Personality, Mrs. Honest, Miss Skillful, and Mrs. Happy. And there are more. There's Mr. Scruffy, Mr. It's at 5 o'clock, Mr. Dull, Mr. Dishonest, and Mrs. Slow. And all I ask the interviewer to do is to tick the boxes that most fit the person in front of them. We don't bother with CVs, we're not interested in what they put on their application form, most of which is something they've written because they think it's going to suit us. We just see if they tick the right boxes, and if they do, we ask them to spend a day working alongside one of our existing colleagues in a shop. And that's how we do it. That's how we pick our people. Where do they come from? Almost half, 48%, come by introduction of someone who already works for us. So, I mean, basically my theory is if I've got loads of the right personality already, their friends and relations will have the right personality, and if they haven't, they'll know they haven't. And so we've got lots of friends, lots of relations, sons, daughters, lots of families. It's great. So that's where most of them come from. And the second biggest source of our new recruits is from prison. And this happens, like most things in business, happen purely by chance. I mean, the one thing you need, I can guarantee, if you want to create a great business, is luck. And we've had loads of luck, and this is one of them. My eldest son, James, who has been our chief executive for the last 13 years, was, just as he started the job, for another organisation, he was organising a function inside a prison near Warrington, Thorne Cross, and the guy who showed him round, called Matt, impressed him so much. James said, look, here's my card. When you get out, give me a ring. I'll find you a job. And that's literally how we started to employ people from prison. And the more we thought about it, we thought, well, we ought to do more of this. And we learned quite a lot. In particular, the fact that of the people who leave prison, there are 61% who reoffend within 2 years, but that drops to 19% if they've got a job. So it makes a difference. We also discovered that there are 85,000 roughly people in prison, of whom a good proportion, not by no means all, but a good proportion are ideal for us and are the right personalities and tick all my Mr. Men boxes, but no one else was interested in them. So by actually taking a keen interest ourselves, we were getting a free run at a very good pool of possible people to work for us. So over the last 13 years, we've really put a lot of work into developing how to make it work for us and to make it work for people leaving prison. We've made loads of mistakes, like you do with everything else. When we started, we tried to be heroes by employing people who actually were going to be total trouble from the first day. Don't do that. We try to, now we understand, we pick the people who rate 9 or 10 out of 10. We don't want the people who are the Drongo type Mr. Men at the bottom. We want to set people up to succeed, not to fail. So we stopped trying to take on some of the difficult cases. But we also understood that we've suddenly got, a lot of the people who joined us have been in prison for quite a long time. And it's quite difficult. It's two different worlds. And suddenly they're moving from one total control situation to our business, which even as dramatically for a business is very different from prison, where we're saying you can do what you want. And I never realised until we started doing this that for a lot of people the prison sentence really starts when they leave prison. And having a prison record makes life so much more difficult for people. Often they come out without any housing. They often leave actually without any family, never mind friends. No access to their kids. Their partners disappeared. They can't get credit. They can't get a bank account. They can't get a mortgage. They can't drive a car because they can't get insurance. They can't go and see their child who's moved to Australia because they can't leave the country. And more than that, they can't get a job. So you've got a whole load of things that you need to help with. And their confidence has been knocked. So it's part of our job. Teaching them to repair shoes and cut keys is the easy bit. Getting their life back on track and giving them their confidence back and the personality is the more difficult thing. And we try and make sure that when they join us, they're a colleague like everyone else and they have the same opportunities. They're not special. And one of the surprises to me, because I was, like anyone would be, terribly nervous when you started to do this. I was nervous about what other people would think. Obviously, I was nervous about what customers would think. That actually hasn't been a problem. People are really pretty impressed with what we do. But I was also concerned about what our other colleagues would think when we asked them to work alongside people who had just left prison. Do you know they've been fantastic? Because without their help, it would not have worked. We've had them even putting up people in their homes because they're homeless. And we have a whole series of things that we do to help our people, which is led by my son James, but also particularly we have, as you see at the bottom there, the foundation team who are 100% looking after. That's all they do, is to look after people who've joined us from prison, and led by Darren, who knows exactly what to do because he joined us from prison himself. And so we're helping not just by training them, but also by dealing with all those other problems of the divorce and the debt, and very often it's more alcohol than drugs actually that gets in the ways of some of the people after prison. We quite often have to lend them money, and we almost certainly need to help with the housing, but by putting that package together we get some success. The most successful are when the people join us working from prison while they're still in prison. ROTL, released on temporary licence. So we've got about 40 people at the moment who today will have been out in our shops and tonight will have gone back to prison, of whom I think 8 are already branch managers. They'll all be in their last sort of 6 months towards release. So it's totally seamless, and that works really well. And You remember I mentioned a few minutes ago that 61% of prison leavers reoffend within 2 years, and it drops to 19% with a job. Our experience is 3%. So it does make a big difference. And we've now got 350 people who are working with us at the moment who joined us from prison. But that's just 10%. Most of what we do, defined by our upside-down management chart, is to support the people who serve our customers, because they make us the money. Everyone joins us as an apprentice. So the first thing we have to do is to train them how to cut keys, how to serve customers, how to do the health and safety, how to repair shoes, and so on. And we've written our own training scheme, because no one else does it. And there's a whole set of manuals for everything we do, and they're all in pictures. We use as few words as possible, and everything is done in pictures, whether it's there talking about watch repairs or there how you cut a key. And so it's simple. I don't put it on our internet thing. I like to have books. I like things they can take home. I think people still actually learn better from the written proper thing instead of off a screen. But that's how we train. And a big incentive for all our people is created by our bonus scheme. We're not a franchise business, although we have got one franchise business called Snappy Snaps, which is a photo business down in London. It's different. But most of our shops are not franchised. They all work for us. They're all our colleagues. But in every branch, in every week, they have the same bonus scheme, which is up there. Very simple. We add up all the wages we pay in the shop in that week. If you're not there, you don't count. If you're on holiday, if you're off sick, not involved. But if the people are there, we add up their wages, multiply by a magic number, 4.5, and that sets a target turnover for that week. And everything over that target, they get 15%, and no limit. So all the turnover over that figure, 15% goes to the people who worked in the shop that week. It's split to them, between them according to the hours they work, but also according to their skill level. So the more of those skills that they get, the bigger share they get of the bonus. And that creates a lot of the adrenaline. That's why we don't have too many people in our shops, because they don't want to have too many colleagues, because they want to have the target low. That's why they don't work their lunches, because they want the turnover to be as high as possible. And basically, that's also why they're very keen to go through all the training and get all the skill levels, because that gives them a bigger share of the bonus. So it's a magic formula, but it works, and I would not be allowed by them to change it. So, but the other secret formula I've got that makes a hell of a difference to our business is this lot. Well, there's many more actually. They're the people who run our area teams. We got 35 of them. It isn't just one person that runs about 45 shops. They've got a team of 6 other people with them. And it's their job then, and incidentally, they know what they're doing because they all start as an apprentice. I don't employ any of the people from elsewhere. They all come up through the business. And their number one job, I've already told you what it is to make sure we've got the right people in the business. They're the people who are selecting those that we describe as the 9s and 10 out of 10s. Our dream is to have a business that is full of 9s and 10s, because we know how much of a difference it makes. And if we're going to have a business full of 9s and 10s, that's why the second most important job that these people, my area team does, is to get rid of the people who are no good. And I don't think many businesses take this job as seriously and give it as an importance as we do. Because you can't have a great business if you hang on to people who are useless. 80 or even 90% of the time of management teams in a lot of companies is spent looking after people who are no good. And they've got no time left to run the business and help the people who are great. And the people who are great don't like working alongside the people who are useless. They're a pain in the neck. They get in the way. They're having to make up for them. So the best thing you can do, not bother about warning letters and all this stuff, simply talk to them and tell them the truth, which is your best will never be good enough for us. So it's time for you to find your happiness elsewhere. And do that as soon as you can, as nicely as you can and as generously as you can, because it's well worth your money to see these people away working for someone else, because you're going to help everyone else in the business. So that's very important. So you probably gather that we have a rather different way of management, because our people are not allowed to tell people what to do. They can't issue orders. Their job is to look after the members of their team. They pick the right people, they set up the right teams, they get rid of the people who are no good, but they look after the people who make us the money. And we expect them to spend a lot of time talking, a lot of time listening. And very often what they're talking to their colleagues about has nothing to do with shoe repairs, key cutting, watch repairs, or anything like that. It's all about the things that are happening away from the business. I'll guarantee if you've got someone who's rates 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, an absolute superstar, who starts to perform badly, the reason will be to do with something else that's happening in their lives. And as long as you're not intruding, or we would never get involved unless we're invited in, it's our job to help with whatever problem it might be, and there's a few drinks, the gambling, relationship problems, very often debt, bereavement, all sorts of things which cause a drop in. If you can take those troubles away, you're helping them in their lives and you're helping yourself in the business. And the biggest one that we find very easy to deal with is debt. Our people are quite good at cutting keys and repairing shoes, but often seem to get into run up a small financial difficulty at home. We just lend them the money. Simple. Always get it back. There are very few reasons. And do you know, it immediately what we've done, we've taken away the worry. We've got actually keener people because they're thankful for what we've done. And most important to me, I've stopped good people breaking rule number 2, which, if you remember, is you've got to put the money in the till. And if they break that one, I've got to say goodbye. So that's important to us. We also do lots of positive things. We have 8 holiday homes in the UK now, which our colleagues can stay at for free. Everyone who works for us gets their birthday off because it's a nice thing to do. And every month we make at least one person's dream come true. And which can be, Pam from Newton Abbot, that was 2 months ago. She had a half-sister who she'd never met because the only time they were together was before their 1-year-old. And she knew of his half-sister who lived in South Africa, and there was another family. So we sent her family to South Africa, and they spent 3 weeks there. And now there's a completely different relationship. We've had loads like that. We've helped people with expensive dental courses of treatment they couldn't afford. We even, earlier this year, paid for a divorce, believe it or not. But there's... What you've got to understand with really praising people and saying thank you, there's no process to it. There's no system to it. The element of surprise is very important. And we're hitting, it'll be 150 years this year since my great-grandfather first opened a shop. So to celebrate, my son James has set up a holiday in Malta, and 150 of our colleagues are joining us on holiday in Malta for 5 days in September. Met one who works in the Max in the Merrion Centre in Leeds only about 2 hours ago, and she's very excited, looking forward to it. So lots of fun things to do. So we have a sort of maverick, unconventional way of doing things, which I partly put down to the influence that I had from my wife. I didn't quite realise what I'd let myself in for when I married Alex. Alex was a nanny, a nursery nurse, and so it wasn't really surprising after we'd had 3 children and the third went to school that she looked round for something else to do and decided to become a foster carer, and which was fine. I didn't really have much choice because you tend to go along with what Alex said, and but we saw the social worker. We eventually got approved. Nothing happened. Then one day I came back and I found another 2 children in the house. And it's been it was a most fantastic time over 31 years. We had some amazingly interesting families came to live with us. Perhaps the most dramatic were the triplets that I think they were about 4 months old, that came to live with us. It's a long time ago because health and safety was different in those days. But having, we had 90 different foster children over the years and learnt more than 90 different lessons. But that's why whenever we have a company charity, it's always to do with children. And in particular, at the moment, we raise money through we've got a simple way of raising money by having collecting boxes every shop. And when we do a job that used to be for free, whether it's a little stitching job or holes in belts, we just ask the customer, don't pay for that, just put £1 in the box. And we raise about £5,000 to £6,000 a week, which we use to share fund with local authorities to actually pay for the support that after adoption through their safe-based scheme give to adoptive parents. And that's because of a thing called attachment, which I'm well aware of as both a foster parent and an adoptive parent. And if you know anybody who is a foster carer or an adoptive parent, and they talk about challenging children and they're wondering what to do, we have copies of that book in every one of our shops specifically for that purpose. Or otherwise, if you're still in despair, send me an email, john@timpson.com, and I'll put you in touch with After Adoption and SafeBase. Alex was great at setting me challenges, and one of the challenges was the local primary school, where I think about 13 of our foster children went there. And Alex was the governor of the school, and it was faced with closure. It only had 42 kids. The local authorities decided it would shut down, and she said, you'll have to do something about it. And my first attempt at doing something about it was actually that I gave them a bursary, £150,000 over 5 years, to extend the curriculum and bring in more interesting things into the children's lives. Actually, I did that basically to blackmail the local council to keep it open. That's the only reason I did it. But Alex went a bit further and said, you're going to have to be chairman of the governors. And I started to talk to Steve, who was the head. And there'll be someone here, I'm sure, who's a governor of a school somewhere, and you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about in terms of all the policies and the various things you're told you have to do by the local authority, which all has to be checked off and minuted that you've approved it. And I said to Steve, move your computer off the desk, forget all the policies, and you spend your life just doing what you think's the best way to look after the kids. And he used the $30,000 a year to make the school more exciting, and he made the lives of the children so exciting. We now have at that school 100 and whatever it is, 68 children, which is full, 24 per class. I won't let them have any more. We became the first primary academy. He's involved. His wife's now opened a free school down the road in Chester, which is doing the same thing. And we've taken on another failing school in Winsford, and we're doing the same thing to that. Which proves, to me, and I've seen it, it's been fantastic, that the upside-down management thing works in education just as well as it works in a shoe repair business. Do you remember the guy who was the expert? He actually lost £120 million in the shops in the UK in the 4 years following our conversation, and we were able to pick up the ones we were after for £1, so that was quite good. But if you don't believe what I'm talking about, if you want to know more, please feel free to go to our shops and chat to the people. Because although we've now got 1,400 outlets, I still believe the way to run the business is to trust the people who serve the customers. And if you want to know more about upside-down management and all the things we do, they're the people to talk to, because they're the people who know most about what Timpsons do. Well, I don't know. About perfect on time. If you want any questions, we have a question.
I'm not from a business background, I'm from an education family background. If you hadn't been from a business background, going back, is it 2 or 3 generations, how easy would this have been for you?
Well, I mean, that's a very good point. That the big advantage I've got, I didn't have it at one time because the business went out of our family and I brought it back in. I have a tremendous advantage of the fact that I own the business. In about 1989, I was about to float the business, and my wife, I can remember the moment, I sat in my study and she came and she said, look, I just want to tell you something before you go any further. And that was a phrase she used. I knew I had to take notice. You're mad to float the business. You'd never get on with all the institutional shareholders and all this governance stuff and having to have direct other people on the board. Don't do it. And that was probably the best piece of advice I've had all the way through. Because you're absolutely right. Most people think we're mad. They don't. I mean, sorry, I've got quite a few accountants here, haven't I? And a number of accountants, when I started to do this birthday off thing, say, how much is that going to cost? I thought that was a pretty dumb question, really, because it's a brilliant thing to do. The amount of sickness we have in our business is much lower than most. And one of the reasons is we give them their birthday off. We let them go to the dentist when they need to. We trust our people, not just in the way they serve the customers, but the way they run their lives. And that makes a big difference, actually, to the well-being of the people who work for us. And they're happier, and their families are happier. But I don't think you could tell, I'm not saying, it'd be very difficult to tell an institutional shareholder that that's the way to run a business. But I think it is.
When you're looking at ex-offenders, are there any crimes that you will not take on?
Yeah. First of all, we select the people. I mean, obviously we work with a lot of prisons. Some prisons are quite difficult to work with because the governors are absolutely useless. I mean, it's like everything in life, like our shop's as good as the manager, a prison as good as the governor. And some just are so sticking to the rules they don't want to talk to us. But we go in and we do the interviewing ourselves, and the person who does the interview, Darren, the guy on the pitch there, he will find out what the offence is. After that, we're not interested, actually. But his job is to actually, he has a role of a health and safety role, if you like. We've got to protect the interests of the people they're working with and the people they're serving. So that's done at that stage. The only 2 offences which are a no-no as far as we're concerned are arson, because we suspect our insurance company would not be happy, and sex offenders. Now, I think we get into a little bit of deep water on sex. I mean, I know there are some people who are on the sex offenders register who give my son James a pretty hard time, because James is now quite high profile in the whole prison world in helping to develop prisons as well as what we do. And I think we might well get to the stage where we start to define, and perhaps this should be done anyway, is to actually look a bit more closely at the broad category of sex offender, because there are some who are not a threat to anybody, and others who certainly are. But at the moment, we don't employ people who are sex offenders, and we don't employ people of arson. But we've got plenty of murderers and loads of drug dealers, and all. But they all have one thing in common: they've all got positive personalities.
You talked about your 5-year kind of period where you had to get this working, get people to trust you. What kind of mechanism do you use to gain that trust?
Okay. Well, I mean, the first important point is that I was determined it was going to happen. And you'll never be able to get this sort of thing running in an organisation unless the person who's leading it absolutely believes it's the right thing to do. It's not, I mean, it's no good someone who is in a middle or even a fairly senior management role thinking they're going to change it if the chief executive isn't on board. So I believed it. But the real key was the sort of middle management level. Our area managers, who are the sort of absolute focus of everything depends on them. And at the beginning they didn't, even though they told me they believed in it, they didn't. I knew that because I spent my life going around and talking to people in the shops, and I knew what they were doing there wasn't quite what I was hoping. And they were still telling people what to do. And never mind what John says, I think what you've got to do is this. So I wrote a manual for them, like in pictures, no words, like I do with all the others, about how to be an area manager. And I didn't just write, I gave it to them in little bits over 3 years of area managers' meetings, and they discussed each bit. And gradually, some dropped out, some found their happiness, not elsewhere, but actually in other jobs in the business. And we got more and more people who were keen on it. And in the end, of course, it became the culture. But you can't create a culture overnight. It does take a long time. Now, everyone who joins us, once they all become as apprentices, and within the first 6 months, they all spend a 24-hour period at where our office is, south of Manchester, understanding what upside down managers is about and what the culture of the business is about. So that if you like, they're brainwashed, but we want them to understand what sort of person we expect them to be. And one of the things that I tell them, because James and I, we both talk to those groups, is you've all been chosen because you've got a positive personality. And you've all been chosen because we trust you to do a great job. And so they understand that. And it works very well. I mean, we're very at ease with ourselves because everyone who works in the organisation has the same values. Almost. Because there's always one or two who have to go.
On average, how long do staff members stay with you?
You know, I never know the answer to that. There's quite a few that don't last more than about 2 months, because we don't always get it right to start with. And then you get a number who sort of drop out after about 5 or 6 years because they come in as really young people, almost from school, not much. They don't tend to get very straight from school. But they get to the stage they think they owe it to themselves to have a go on their own, and quite a lot of those come back. But I mean, every month I don't write the letter, I just top and tail a letter to everybody who's been with us for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20, and so on. And the pile of 3 years is getting bigger. The pile of 5 is substantial. Next month, May, I'll have our long service lunch that I always have at my house. But we have to have a very big table these days because there will be 25 of them who've done either 25 years or Kelvin, who I met yesterday afternoon in Newport, Monmouthshire, who will have completed 45 years, and he's not the only one. So we've got a lot of people who've been around a lot of time. And I think more important to me is the fact that a lot of them get their children to come and work for us. And that, I think, is one of the biggest compliments that they pay us.
Thanks for the talk. It's been very inspirational. I'm struck by you've mentioned how you visited a shop this afternoon, you've been visiting some of the shops, and you're very involved in the day-to-day running of the business. How much is the business you, and are you replaceable in the business? How much is it fueled day-to-day? Is that culture?
Oh, okay, I've been replaced. I don't have anything to do with day-to-day running of the business. I go around and visit the shops. I sort of like seems to help. They seem to like to see me, and I'm part of the culture. I'm sort of reinforcing that it's fine. John's there. He's still okay. But James runs the business, who is my eldest son, and I'm very lucky. He's fantastic. But we work together. I mean, we've spoken once or twice today. We speak every day. I don't know where he's been he was in the office today. He was in London yesterday. He's all over the place like I am. I still get involved in the strategic stuff of what the business is. Do you know, the older you get, the further you can think ahead? It's amazing, really. I do. We don't do marketing. We don't have a marketing department. We don't have a PR. We don't use PR or anything like that. But I do the communications, so I do a bit of that. But no, I've been replaced. And next concern is what happens to the next generation, because I've already got two grandchildren. One age 16, nearly 16. Yes, he is 16. 16, one nearly 18, who have worked in our shops. One helped to design our mobile phone repair business. So I'm pretty confident we've got another lot coming along.
Yes, you mentioned previously that you do the actual interviewing of the ex-offenders when they're actually in the prisons.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, when you decide to actually hire them, do you implement like a training day workshop within the prison, so when they get out, they're ready to work, or do you do the training of the staff after?
Okay. It happens two different ways. We do have still, we used to have more training workshops inside prison. We had one in Liverpool Prison, we had one in Wandsworth, Forest Bank, which is in Salford. We've actually got two different workshops in Forest Bank, which is the first one that came from. We've got a training workshop in Newhall, which is a women's prison near Wakefield, and another one at Blantyre House, which is an open prison down in Kent. So we still have some training workshops inside prison. But a lot of the training happens quite happily outside in the shops, as long as we can persuade the prison authorities to let the guys and girls out on the day release. It works better that way. I mean, it's because actually, the workshop we have in Thorne Cross also is a real workshop. We're training as well as doing a proper job into the more complicated shoe repairs. So we've got a number of our people who are regular employees who go out from outside and go into prison every day to work in the workshops, not just as training, but to do a job. And they work from 8 o'clock till 4:30 and have half an hour for lunch. The prisoners go off for an hour and a half for lunch and do much shorter hours. And this is the problem. You get screwed up by the routine in the prison. It's much easier for us to get them on the outside. We've learned that through experience. But so we do a bit of both. But actually, the way to help these people best is to give them a straightforward job.
I'm really interested with your bonus scheme. Very simple to understand, and it looks kind of self-motivating and self-regulating. Lots of retailers now are struggling with the national minimum living wage. Looks like your scheme kind of self-accommodates that without having to change any other terms and conditions and benefits.
Yeah, you spotted that. I mean, the move to the national living wage actually costs, of course, it increases the threshold for our bonus, so it doesn't cost me a lot. I actually don't think that the Treasury are as clever as they think they are. I think they fail to think through a lot of things, not just the living wage, but particularly the apprentice levy, which is nothing more than a tax, and we will pay the apprentice levy and get nothing back, and we've got the greatest training scheme I can think of. But I won't have the government have anything to do with the way I train my people, because I think I know how to do it, and I don't think they do. But I think the living wage is going to have an enormous number of unintended consequences. And it's already probably starting. The temptation would be to cut out some of the extras, maybe the holiday homes. Not for us, we wouldn't do it, but other companies will look at where they can save money to pay for the living wage. It also means it goes against the principle that I believe in, that the people who are great, the 9s and 10s out of 10s, should get paid more than people who are only 5 out of 10. And it's not doing that. I actually don't agree with the 25-year age limit, and we are paying the people who are a younger age the same living wage as the others if they're doing the same job, if they're up to the same standard. But when it gets to £9 or whatever it is, then I think it really gets quite serious. as to the implications. And I can't remember anything as dramatic on the wage front since about 1974, I think it was, when their inflation was running at 28%, 27.8% it got to, and that to stop, because it was a wage push inflation, whatever that is, to try and stop that, they introduced a £6 maximum wage increase. The people in our shops in those days were only getting £11 a week, so they suddenly got £17 a week. It was the biggest percentage increase that we've ever had. And as a result of that, you've got more self-service, we employed a lot less people, and it was totally another load of unintended consequences. So, yeah, watch this space. I think there's quite a lot more to come. One at the top there.
Did I read that you're in favour of the...
I'm sorry.
Sorry, did I read that you're in favour of the UK coming out of the EU?
You would have read that, yeah.
In a nutshell. What would be the main reasons for
Oh, very simple. I mean, I think, forget all the facts. There aren't any facts. You can't have facts about the future. I mean, they're all made up. What this is about is people's personality. Either you're a sort of box-ticking, process-driven, conservative, keep it safe sort of guy, and you want to stay in, and you're worried about next week, or if you're like me, you're a bit of a maverick, and I've seen the benefits of having the freedom of not being told what to do. And I can see a future of great possibility that is which we can be free to achieve if we are not run by Europe and told what to do by other countries. And that fits my personality. So that's why I'm for out. I believe that all the arguments that are put forward actually are then invented once you've decided what decision you've taken. So the people who are saying in are now coming up with all the dangers of what's going to happen to this and that and the other, and how uncertainty is going to come, and there's going to be wages going to go up or down, or unemployment's going to go. It doesn't mean anything. No one can forecast that. I think it's just about personality. I was interested as well, actually, because I emailed my 3 teenage grandchildren. I got 8, but only 3 are teenagers. And asked them what they thought I should vote. And I was surprised on 2 things. One was that they all replied within an hour, which is the first time it's ever happened. And they all said in. But then the eldest said, and by the way, I will be 16 by the time the vote comes. So I'm quite safe in that he'll be voting in, I'll be voting out, and we'll. But I'm not campaigning. I've just explained why I come to that decision.